these three figures, and if you've got a calculator, work out this one here and see which is the best one. And we'll have a break for a couple of minutes and then we'll talk a bit more about discounting. Okay, now if you do the sums for this, I've already got the one here for $1,100 in 2 years' time, and for $1,500 in 10 years' time is there. Now I used to have a little graph about that. I must have decided not to do it this year. Okay, and it depends on your interest rate. You see, at 7%, this is the best choice. But at somewhere like 5%, I think it is, it switches over and one of the others becomes better. So your decision is never an absolute decision, or it can be if it's really, really different. But quite often it depends on the interest rate you choose. And that's a decision we'll be talking about in the next lecture on this topic. Okay, now the idea behind discounting, because you've now seen what present value is, what future value is. So the idea behind discounting is that $1,000 today is not the same as $1,000 in a year from today. Now this is a thing here. A lot of people, they get confused and they go, oh, discounting, that's when I get 10% off for cash. Or that's when we have a sale and they have discount of 40%. That is a different use of the word discounting. Okay, and so what I try and do is talk about a price reduction to try and avoid too much confusion. So what you have to do is clear from your mind the idea is that a discount is a reduction in price. When we're talking about discounting, that is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about with discounting is that we are trying to get all of the figures that happen in different time frames into the same time frame so that we can compare them. Before we did that, when we just looked at these numbers, this is the biggest number, so it looks like the most attractive thing. But in fact, it is the least attractive. It's far less money than this one here. So a naive observer would go, oh, this is better because it's more. And you think, oh, how could you possibly think that? But that's because this is a very straightforward example. But when you get more complex examples, especially with annuities, which again we'll talk about next time, it's harder to see which ones are better. And that is why we use discounting. And it's a really important part of accounting. And when you do accounting or finance, I'm assuming some of you are hoping to do a finance degree, then this is sort of basically one of the key ideas behind finance. Okay, so why? First of all, you can earn money with the $1,000. You can put it in a bank account or buy and sell shares or invest in property, etc. And what I said before is there is the issue of inflation, but even if there were no inflation at all, the whole issue of discounting would still be important, because even at zero inflation, if you can earn interest on money, then it is worth using it. Now, what a lot of people don't realise is that when you aren't using money, you're also, in a way, incurring interest. And so people say, oh, well, I've actually got the money to buy a car, so really it's not costing me anything in terms of running it. But that's not true. Say you spend $10,000 on a car and you don't have the $10,000 anymore, what you are paying in terms of the amount of money you've paid for the car is the interest on that $10,000 that you would have earned if you had not bought the car. Okay, so even though you go, oh, but I had the money anyway, doesn't matter. You had the money anyway, you could have earned interest on it, so that is the money you are foregoing in having, say, a $10,000 car. So often people think, oh, well, if I didn't have to get the money, it doesn't count, but it does. Discounting applies to every single financial transaction that occurs over time. Okay, so what's the impact? Is that we must take time and discount rate into account when making decisions, and decisions that look good at face value when you just look at the numbers look great, can be totally wrong when you start to take into account the value of money over time. And the other thing is that the choice of discount factor is a really, really important one. And discount factor is just another name for discount rate, but it's really implying that we're using it in decision making. And some of the reasons why people make bad decisions, particularly for the environment, are to do with the fact of the discount factor they have chosen. If you choose a high discount factor, then money flows in the far future have very little impact on the decision because they're basically discounted away. And so when governments decide to use a high discount factor when they are making decisions about various things, it tends to go for short-sighted thinking and very little thinking about future generations. So there's a lot more to this than meets the eye.